Well, some breaking news now on Talk, and that is that the head of the Metropolitan Police's Black Police Association, who swapped thousands of racist and sexist WhatsApp messages, has been sacked for gross misconduct. This is Inspector Charles Ehikioya, who is 58. He shared more than 7,000 messages with a former PC called Carlo Francisco between 2017 and 2020. They included jokes about Katie Price's disabled son Harvey, disabled people in general, and Muslims. He was the full-time chairman of the Metropolitan Black Police Association. He was dismissed without notice at the end of a misconduct hearing in London today. The panel saying it was an appropriate and proportionate sanction. He claims that he's the victim of a racist conspiracy, and the allegations were found proven by a police disciplinary committee. Yeah, I mean, making jokes about Katie Price's disabled son Harvey, don't do that. Don't ever do that. That's despicable. Let's talk to Danny Shaw. He is a Home Affairs commentator, former advisor to the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Danny, justice has been served by the sound of it.
Well, the evidence seems pretty damning in this particular case, Peter. I noted that he had been found guilty by the misconduct panel and really found guilty of gross misconduct. I mean, the sanction has to be a sacking in that kind of case, really. I don't see that there's really any other option for the panel, particularly given the crackdown that Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, has launched about standards in the Metropolitan Police. You know, it may be that he will appeal against this dismissal. That's quite common for people to go down that route. They do have a right to appeal, so it's not the end of the story. And we have seen in the past that police officers who've been dismissed or given sanctions have won their appeals. So I wouldn't say it's the end of the story, but on the face of it, the evidence looks pretty damning. The WhatsApp messages are all there that he was exchanging over a long period of time. According to the Met's lawyer, racist, homophobic and videos of an extreme sexual nature were being exchanged with another officer who I believe has left the Metropolitan.
Yeah, he's left the force. There were jokes as well about having sex with a girl with Down syndrome. I mean, if this is true, and that's what the Metropolitan Police said is, this is just a pretty despicable human being. He says there's a racist conspiracy. Will, of course, continue. I mean, I've some of the detail here of what was in some of the messages. It's 20 to 5 in the afternoon. I'm not going to read some of this stuff out. It just sounds absolutely horrendous. Danny, thanks for your analysis of that, especially as it's a breaking news story. Speaking of news stories that are big, that haven't gone away and probably won't go away, nor should they, the rape gang scandal continues, and there is a big survey out saying that a majority of British people back a new inquiry. This is a poll from YouGov saying that more than 3/4 of people say that an investigation should happen. Only 13% of adults agree with the government that no further inquiry is needed, including just 1 in 5 Labour voters. Do you think, I want to ask you sort of two separate questions. One I'll ask you secondarily, which is what would you advise Yvette Cooper to do? Let's not get into that just for a second. What do you think will happen? Is it inevitable that a national inquiry or some form of further inquiry, maybe locally, will happen in terms of where this issue is, both morally, politically, in terms of what the public are saying? What do you think?
I don't think there will be a national inquiry. I think it's possible that the government will institute some kind of give some sort of support to more local inquiries, which I think they've already mentioned. I think Yvette Cooper in her statement on Monday said that there was someone, a key figure, who would help local councils and authorities if they want to do inquiries. I'm also quite struck by the comments of Harriet Harman, the former Labour MP. I think she now sits in the House of Lords.
She does, yeah.
Who's sort of charted a more constructive way forward, which is really about giving people in council, social services and police and others the support to tackle these issues, so that they feel that that they're not bound by concerns about political correctness, but they confront these issues head on. They do it in the right way, and they're not sort of frightened off it because they're being accused of racism.
Yeah.
And she suggested a sort of framework support and guidance around, what is the best way to approach these issues? Because I think, honestly, Peter, that's at the root of the problem. I honestly don't think we need another inquiry right now. I just don't think that's the priority. I know what the opinion poll says, but opinion polls can say a lot of things. We've had 7 years, £200 million, an inquiry, 61 reports and publications, 2 million pages of evidence. We've had other local inquiries. We've had inquiries Sajid Javid, former Home Secretary, did. We know what the issues are. Okay, there's always more stuff that can come up. The priority's got to be protecting young people, implementing the recommendations, none of them implemented so far.
Yeah.
Giving support to the police to go after the gangs and the perpetrators.
On that note,
that's priority, surely.
On that note, Danny, look, I know and you know the Home Office is a tricky place. It is a very complex place, and there are lots of ways in which implementing those 20 different recommendations, or the 18 that the Conservatives accepted, I think it is pretty inexcusable that the Conservatives were in power for 18 months after the Professor Alexis Jay report. They said they accepted 18 of the 20 recommendations, and what was done? Nothing in 18 months. However, Labour have been in power for 6 months. They knew Jess Phillips was going to come in. The Home Office knew Jess Phillips was going to come in as a minister, or it was highly likely that that was going to happen. It was highly likely, nearly inevitable, that Labour were going to win the election in 2024. So my point to the Home Office would be, and I wonder what you think about this, is surely you're ready to go on day one. If you have Jess Phillips as your minister, surely you're going to say, right, okay, this is going to take primary legislation, it's going to be really complex, it's going to be really difficult to get through Parliament, but surely when the minister comes in, you say, right, Minister Phillips, what's your number one priority? Well, as you are aware, I've been talking about this for years and years and years. What I would like to do is implement the Professor Alexis Jay report. Let's do that. I mean, surely that just happens quickly, and I think the public and many of our viewers and listeners are absolutely baffled both by the failure of the Conservatives over 18 months to do really anything about what Professor Alexis Jay has done. I've asked Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, about that. He was a Home Office minister in government. But I just can't get to the bottom of the Labour aspect of this. What do you think, Danny?
I think you've got a really good point. I looked through the Labour manifesto, and obviously I had some role in that, and I don't think there's a mention of it. There's no mention in the manifesto itself of implementing the recommendations or the key recommendation about mandatory reporting. Now, look, it had been part of Labour Party policy. They said they were going to do it. And I think perhaps what has happened is they almost kind of took it for granted that that was what they were going to do, but didn't make it a central plank of the manifesto, even mention it in the manifesto. And I think you're right, 6 months have elapsed, and it's taken this political storm with, voices off and a whole row about it to bring to bring the Home Secretary, my old boss, to the House of Commons to make. What
would you advise her to do? I think I don't expect you to respond to this, Danny, and I don't want to put you on the spot on this, but I think Labour dropped the ball not bringing you into the Home Office. I think that was a mistake. What would you advise Yvette Cooper to do at this moment?
Well, I think the statement that she made last week, on Monday, was the right thing to do, saying that they were going to implement the mandatory reporting, grooming would be an aggravating factor in sentencing, and a new performance framework for recording ethnicity of perpetrators, because there is some data out there, and it does show that Pakistanis are overly represented in terms of perpetrators in grooming, but the data is not great, and it needs to be collected in a better way. So I think that's a good first step. But I would just say you've got to make real progress on this really quickly in the next couple of weeks and ensure there is some kind of action plan. And I would also think very seriously about taking Harriet Harman up on her suggestion of ensuring that people give them the tools so they have the confidence to tackle these issues head on. But please don't waste more money on legal fees on another national inquiry. It's not what is needed right now.
Danny, thank you. Home Affairs commentator and a former advisor to Yvette Cooper, Danny Shaw, thank you for your thoughts on that.